Welcome to the CBPF funding targets and HRP funding visualization of the CBPF Data Hub. Let's start by defining the terminology. CBPF stands for Country-Based Pooled Funds, and HRP for Humanitarian Response Plan. CBPF aim to achieve a certain amount of the HRP objectives. Each year, CBPF targets are set, aligned on HRP requirements. In this visualization, users can see and compare the CBPF targets, the HRP requirements, and both the CBPF and the HRP actual funding, at global and country scales. Start by selecting a year using the timeline. The first section of this visualization is a global summary. It analyzes the main CBPF and HRP figures, both targeted and actual fundings, and allows an easy, up-to-scale comparison. Hover over the section to get the detailed figures in a pop-up box. The second section provides a bar and a circular graph of detailed data for each fund. The bar is a comparison of targeted and actual CBPF and HRP values. The dotted line represents the CBPF target. For Afghanistan, it was set at $69.2 million. This CBPF target represents 15% of the HRP actual funding, $461 million. The HRP requirements for the same year were $599 million. In this situation, the CBPF actual funding exceeded the CBPF target, as Afghanistan Humanitarian Fund received $93.4 million. Which brings us to our second graph. First thing to know about this graph, the percentage in the center of the circle does not represent the value shown by the blue circle. This figure at the center of the circle is the percentage of CBPF funding received against the overall HRP funding. For Afghanistan, CBPF funding represented 20% of the HRP funding. The blue circle indicates the percentage of CBPF funding out of the total CBPF target. Afghanistan exceeded the target, thus has a full blue circle. This is not the case for all funds. Yemen Humanitarian Fund, for instance, received $169 million in financing, which represents 45% of their target of $376 million. The blue circle represents this ratio. It shows that the CBPF target funding represents 45% of the CBPF actual funding. On the other hand, the 7% represents the actual CBPF funding received by Yemen against the overall HRP funding, which is of $2.51 billion. Users can access the exact blue circle percentage and more detailed data for each fund by hovering over the bars. In this section, you can use the menu at the top to sort out the funds so that they are ranked from top down according to these variables. For instance, selecting the option CBPF funding will list the funds from the most to the least funded. Finally, the bottom section provides data on the funds that do not have HRPs. For these funds, both the percentage in the center of the circle graph and the blue circle represent by default the CBPF funding relative to the CBPF target. As usual, you can find at the top of the visualization the common CBPF Data Hub features: Share, Image, CSV and Help.